Okay, so this is lesson 4 of series 1, Before the Genesis Flood. So today's talk's Dinosaurs in the Bible. Next week will be the final lesson in this series called The Pre-Flood World and Climate versus Today. And we'll answer questions like, what was the weather before the flood? And how did people live to be 900 years old? Who was Cain's wife? And was primitive man intelligent? And did tropical trees grow in the Arctic? So we'll address some of those questions. So today's talk, like I mentioned, Dinosaurs in the Bible. Also, this will be uploaded on the Grace Presbyterian Hanover YouTube channel as well. I do want to acknowledge the creation science reference material that I used. Answers in Genesis, and also from Institute for Creation Research. Today's outline is basically simple. We'll answer three questions. 1, are dinosaurs in the Bible? 2, are there records of dinosaurs living with man? And 3, what killed the dinosaurs? So let's get started. How do you fit dinosaurs in the Bible? Well, you don't. But you know, most Christians don't have answers to these types of questions because they're influenced by the secular science of evolution and millions of years. And they try to fit fossils and millions of years into the Bible. But the point is, you don't fit things into the Bible. You don't take man's interpretation of the evidence and the present and try to fit in the Bible. What you need to do is use the Bible to explain dinosaurs. And you start with the Bible and use Bible's history to explain dinosaurs. And that's where we're going to go today. We're going to start with the Bible and then the revealed Word of God. So the Bible gives us the big picture of history. It's the history book of the universe. And the Bible gives us the right understanding of the past that we can apply to the evidence that we see in the present. And then we can explain like dinosaurs. And we can use observational science in the present to confirm that the biblical worldview is correct. Secular science has to come to some very wrong conclusions about evolution, the age of the earth, and dinosaurs because they start with the wrong assumptions. Our conclusions can only be as good as our starting assumptions. I want to start with an example. Does anyone know what a calf puller is? Has anyone even heard of a calf puller at all? You have? Yeah, that's good. A calf puller is used when a cow is having trouble giving birth, like a breech birth, and the legs are coming out first. A farmer can attach that calf puller and pull the calf out. So, one day a man from a nearby city drives by a farmer using the calf puller. The city man slams on the brakes. You know, he sees this, what's going on here? It looks funny. He gets out of the car. He asks the farmer, what's going on here? The farmer asks the city man, did you see anything like this before? And the city man said, no, I've never seen anything like this. The farmer says, do you have any questions? And the city man had one question. And he said, how fast was that calf going? Because it's a breech birth. The city man thought the calf went inside the cow when the cow's giving birth to the calf. So, wrong assumptions lead to wrong conclusions. How fast was that calf going? And secular scientists have come to some very wrong conclusions about certain things like the age of the earth, millions of years, and wrong assumptions. Going back to the early 1800s, Charles Lyell, a Scottish lawyer, sought to change the way we look at the history of the earth. Before his day, most scientists believed in the Bible and the creation account we have in Genesis. Lyell said his goal was to, quote, free the science from Moses. So you can see in that statement he had a bias against the biblical worldview. From that point on, though, the majority of the scientific community adopted this naturalistic, atheistic worldview. And once you start looking at the world in a particular way, it can be hard to see it any other way, especially if you're not saved and born again. In a real sense, you get brainwashed. So I'm going to do a quick brainwashing exercise to show you what I'm talking about. I'll tell you a story, ask 2 questions. If you know the answers, then you weren't brainwashed. If not, I was able to get you to think the way I wanted you to think, and you may not even have any idea how it happened. And it'll probably even happen in the first few sentences, so I'm giving you a warning ahead of time, okay? So let's go through this short exercise. Once upon a time, a man left home jogging. He jogged a little ways, turned left. He jogged a little ways and turned left. He jogged a little ways, turned left, and jogged back home. As he was jogging home, he noticed 2 masked men waiting for him at home. So the 2 questions are, who were the masked men? Why did he leave home jogging? With a raise of hands, does anybody have an answer to this that they think they know? I'll go through it one more time, just in case. Once upon a time, a man left home jogging. He jogged a little ways, turned left. He jogged a little ways, turned left. He jogged a little ways, turned left, and jogged back home. As he was jogging home, he noticed 2 masked men waiting for him at home. Who were the masked men, and why did he leave home jogging? Anybody have an answer to this at all? Okay. Most of you, well, maybe all of you have been brainwashed. I'll clear your minds with one picture, and you'll say, oh, I should have figured that out. In fact, you might be even kicking yourself once you see this picture. Now, it does require a little knowledge of sports, okay?
Oh, that's right.
So, once upon a time, a man left home jogging. He went a little ways, turned left, jogged a little ways, turned left, jogged a little ways, turned left, and then jogged back home. So the man hit a home run and jogged around the bases. And who were the 2 masked men? And the catcher. Now, why couldn't most of you think of the correct answers? Well, when I first saw this, I thought left home, left home jogging, But you may have thought he left home from his home of residence instead of home base, right? Yeah. So once you start interpreting the words in a certain way, it's hard to see them any other way. So it's, in a way, it's a brainwashing technique. So with that in mind, let's see how our children can get brainwashed or deceived about dinosaurs. Do you know how millions of kids are being pushed down the wrong worldview path every day? Here's a kid's book titled, I Can Read About Dinosaurs. I have one up here, a sauropod dinosaur. It's cute, cuddly. And what's the very first word you see in this book? Millions of years ago. It's the very first word. They're being brainwashed that dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. When much of the world was warm and swampy, strange-looking reptiles called dinosaurs roamed the earth. Here's another book called about dinosaurs. And what does it teach? Millions of years ago. Even Dr. Seuss, later in their book, not hundreds of years, not thousands of years, but millions of years. Meet little 5-year-old Joey. He's about to start school. It could be public school, private school, home school. What has he learned without his parents even knowing? He's already learned about evolution, the Big Bang, millions of years, dinosaurs lived, people evolved from apes. But how would he know that, especially for homeschooling? Well, he learned this through cartoon characters from watching television or reading books or watching videos. They're so cute and harmless, right? What do I mean? You got Land Before Time, Ice Age, Dinosaur Train, The Great Dinosaur Rescue, Walt Disney's Dinosaur, Dino Dan. Children's videos, movies, books are full of the evolutionary worldview and will help influence and brainwash our kids to this theory without parents really even realizing it. And the theory of evolution will push them away from the biblical authority of Genesis. And many Christians feel that, sometimes we feel that Christians have forgotten about this important truth. The secular media is out there dangling dinosaurs in front of our children. Christians are not the only fishers of men, and dinosaurs are used as bait to draw kids into the secular worldview. Now, to reel you in for a good dose of evolution, now that I told you about this cute dinosaur who's lived millions of years ago before man, and dinosaurs make this so easy. So our kids and grandkids read one book after another, watch one video after another on these amazing, mysterious creatures from Disney Channel, National Geographic, NOAA, PBS, whatever. They're systematically being taught an evolutionary worldview that says the Bible is wrong and the Bible's history can't be trusted. And what did Jesus say in John 3:12? I have spoken to you of earthly things, and you do not believe. How then will you believe if I speak of heavenly things? And what are the earthly things? We have the 6 days of creation. We have Noah's flood. We have the Tower of Babel. The Genesis 1 through 11 foundational information. And so if we can't trust the earthly things, as Jesus says, then how can we trust the heavenly things of salvation? That's why 1 Peter 3:15 is a good verse. But sanctify the Lord in your hearts and always be ready to give a defense or an answer to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that's in you, but do it with meekness and fear. You can't come across arrogant. You got to do it with a humble heart, Christ-like attitude. So the Bible tells us to have answers for our faith, even about dinosaurs. So, question, the 6 days of creation. What day were dinosaurs created? Any guesses in the audience? Day 6, that's when the land animals and man were created. Day 6. What's the logic? We'll use Tyrannosaurus rex. That's a land animal, right? And so is this sauropod dinosaur. Land animals were created on day 6. And Tyrannosaurus rex was created on day 6 because it was a land animal. So that should be pretty straightforward. But why don't we see dinosaur in our King James Bible? Or even, well, I'll focus on the King James because when it was written. Well, the word dinosaur was not invented until 1841 by Sir Richard Owen, which means terrible lizard. And the King James Version was translated in English in 1611. So the word dinosaur didn't come until 230 years later. So that's why you don't see it in the King James Version. Also, there's a word similar to dinosaur, and is brought up about 20 minutes ago. And it's used numerous times in the Bible, especially in the King James Version. It is the word dragon. Dragon in Hebrew is tanin. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. Tanin. And tanin is translated dragon 22 times in the Old Testament, in the King James Bible, and also in the Greek, draco. So a total of 34 times in the Bible, it's dragon is used. I'll give you some samples from the King James Version. Deuteronomy 32:33, their wine is the poison of dragons. Praise the Lord from the earth, ye dragons and all deeps. Psalm 148:7. We go to Jeremiah 9:11, and I will make Jerusalem heaps and a den of dragons. Micah 1:8, I'll make a wailing like the dragons. Also Psalm 74:13, Thou breakest the heads of the dragons in the waters. Now, do note that New King James Version doesn't call it dragons, it calls it sea serpents. So what kind of dragons in the waters are there? Well, there's fossil records of a Chronosaurus that looks like that, pretty scary. Also a plesiosaur, and they say the Loch Ness Monster may be something like that. So where do we see potential dinosaurs in the Bible? Let's go to Job chapter 40, verse 15. When God tells Job, look now at the behemoth which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. Now, some Bibles have asterisks and they have notes, and they say the behemoth is possibly the hippopotamus or the elephant. Let's investigate that. Also, the next verse, Job 40:16, says, Lo, now his strength is in his loins, his force is in the navel of his belly. So what animals have big bellies? Well, elephants have a big belly, right? Hippopotamus has a big belly, and a sauropod dinosaur has a big belly. But it also says in the next verse, he moves his tail like a cedar. Think of a tree. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. Do those tails look like a cedar tree to you? They look like twigs, don't they? Now, well, does the Bible say, lo, or behold Job, his tail sways like a twig? No. What's a big animal that looks more like a tree? That would be that sauropod dinosaur drawing. So let's start attaching some tails. So there's a hippopotamus, if you gave him a tail like a cedar tree, we don't see that, right? And the elephants, that doesn't fit. But a sauropod dinosaur, that fits just nice. So if your Bible has footnotes like possibly the hippopotamus or the elephant, remember the Bible's text is inspired, not the footnotes. Also, it goes on in Job, his bones are like strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. When we see a Brachiosaurus toe bone, and we compare that with what the Bible says, his bones are as strong pieces of brass, that's a toe bone. You see how small ours, that goes beyond 8 inches long, so very big toe bones. And what about his bones are like bars of iron? Here's a sauropod dinosaur. I have one up here. It's kind of small, but look how big their leg bones are. Half the leg is taller than that man. That's how big these dinosaurs were. And I was saying earlier that their legs are higher than the roof of this church. So those were massive, massive animals. And that's a picture from the National Geographic. Also in Job 40:19, he is the first of the works of God. Only he who made him can bring near his sword. I have a clip here from Jurassic Park 1993, and look now at the behemoth which I made along with you. And they try to give an accurate depiction of how big this animal was. Also, he eats ox like a grass. This picture, he's eaten off the tree. But he moves his tail like a cedar tree. And he is the first of the ways of God. See how big that animal is? And God is almost like telling Job, he is the first of the ways of me. Here's a clip from Institute for Creation Research, goes a few minutes, where they discuss, kind of review what I just brought up. Behemoth, uncovering the truth about dinosaurs. I'll play this.
It's the giant beast Behemoth found in the book of Job. The Bible reads, look now at the behemoth, which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. See, now his strength is in his hips, and his power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are tightly knit. His bones are like beams of bronze, his ribs like bars of iron.
So to understand the context of what the Behemoth and Leviathan are, what we have to understand is that prior to their description in the book of Job, God is already describing to Job a bunch of very real animals that Job knows and is familiar with. And that pattern continues. There's no break. There's no statement where all of a sudden God says, now I'm describing mythology.
This fits the idea that Job was alive after the flood when sauropods were still alive. They've since gone extinct. But was Job looking at one when God described it? He said, "Behold now Behemoth, which I made along with you," i.e., on day 6 of creation week, God made man and animals, including dinosaurs.
What can we glean from the world around us and the animals by us versus maybe something in the fossil record? Well, one of the features that God describes to Job about the behemoth is the tail. And the tail is described as something that sways like a cedar tree. Now, this is a femur bone of a small herbivorous dinosaur. And so this animal has a muscle that connects from the leg bone out to the tail. Now, dinosaurs held their tails out straight. So if we think about where this animal is, we've got the hips here, the leg moving forward and back, and the tail extending out behind it. This muscle grabs onto the tail so that every time the leg moves forward, the tail pulls in to the side of that leg. And every time the leg moves back and the other leg on the other side moves forward, it pulls the tail the opposite direction. So as a dinosaur is walking, moving its legs back and forth, the muscles of those legs are connecting to the tail, causing the tail to sway back and forth, moving gently like a tree in the wind.
Okay, hopefully that helps you understand tying in sauropod dinosaur to behemoth. Also in Job, the very next chapter, 41, talks about another creature called Leviathan. And let's look what the Bible has to teach on Leviathan. Job 41, verse 1, "Can you draw out Leviathan with a hook? Indeed, any hope of overcoming him is false. Shall one not be overwhelmed by the sight of him? His sneezings flash forth light, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning." 41:19, "And out of his mouth go burning lights, sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke comes out of the nostrils as from a boiling pot, and burning rushes. His breath kindles coals, and a flame goes out of the mouth." So is the Bible teaching that we had a fire-breathing dragon or dinosaur in Job's day called Leviathan? Let's look at some examples of animals we see today. One is called the bombardier beetle. It's not far-fetched today that there could have been a fire-breathing dragon. A bombardier beetle shoots liquid out of his backside and shoots out a gaseous mixture which heats up to over 200 degrees. And they call him the Rambo of the insect world. And he's only 1 inch in size. So I'll play this short clip from Animal Planet. Talks about it.
Known to scientists, it's the bombardier beetle. When threatened, it fires out a burning liquid at a temperature of over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, almost boiling point. It does it by pumping a liquid fuel into a reaction chamber where a catalyst ignites the mixture. The burning chemicals have nowhere to go but out, and with a bang.
So each time this beetle does it, it shoots about 70 times very rapidly, and the damage can be fatal to any attacking insect, small creatures, and it could burn human skin. So it's not far-fetched. If God can create a 1-inch beetle to do this, why not a large dragon or dinosaur? Let's look at another animal. You've probably heard of electric eels, right? Electric eels generate electricity. And let's play this short clip.
God made electric eels capable of generating over 600 volts of electricity in short, intense bursts. They come from specialized tissues designed to generate and direct electrical current.
Okay, if you found a skeleton of an electric eel that died, say on the road, or I guess it'd be in the water, alongside the shore, you would not know that that electric eel generated electricity, right? This is a similar analogy to the bones, say, of a Leviathan dinosaur. If we found the bones of a fire-breathing dragon, we would not be able to determine it had this capability, because all we see are the bones, right? Besides, most All animals produce methane and a flammable gas. All you need is something to ignite it. Third example is a firefly. Did you know that the chemical reaction that takes place inside of a firefly is 100% efficient? All the energy used in the reaction is converted to light. Compare that to the lights, say, in this building. Light bulbs lose most of their energy, especially the older ones, 90% of their energy through heat. So here's an example of God's design which is better than man's.
Fireflies produce light in a similar way to how a glow stick works. The light results from a catalyzed and controlled chemical reaction called bioluminescence. If God can create animals that zap, blast, and glow, then he can make animals that breathe fire.
And I have another short clip from Institute for Creation Research where they summarize what I put together on Leviathan.
There are 5 references to a Leviathan in the King James Bible, in Job, Psalms, and Isaiah. Some think that Leviathan is simply a whale, but the description in Job refers to scales, which whales don't have.
Now, right after God describes the behemoth to Job as an animal that he knows and is familiar with, he describes the Leviathan as another animal that Job has seen. And in contrast to the behemoth, which was a land-dwelling, plant-eating type of animal, he now turns to the Leviathan and says, can you draw it out with a hook?
One statement in the Bible has been a source of controversy, the claim that Leviathan breathed fire. In Job 41:19 through 21, the Bible describes the Leviathan this way. Out of his mouth go burning lights, sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke goes out of his nostrils, as from a boiling pot, and burning rushes. His breath kindles coals, and a flame goes out of his mouth.
So if this is a real creature, how could that have happened? We don't have a creature today that can breathe fire out of its mouth. That doesn't exist today that we know of. But does that mean that it could not have existed in the past? Possibly it could have, especially if we consider some of the amazing biological devices that God has designed into all these different creatures. For example, thousands of different sea creatures and even some land creatures can produce light. And even the bombardier beetle does have this little cannon, and it shoots out steam blasts, and they're super hot and they burn its enemies.
Also, the Bible talks about flying reptiles. If you go to Isaiah 14:29, it states, its offspring will be a fiery flying serpent. Isaiah 30 verse 6, the viper and fiery flying serpents. So let's look at the Tyrannosaurus Rex. And what's on his menu? They had teeth 6 inches long, and actually this isn't a tooth, but this is an Allosaurus claw I have up here, and that's from here to here is probably 6 inches. So think of a tooth that long that the Tyrannosaurus Rex has. So quick question. Was this dinosaur originally, when I say originally, I'm talking the Garden of Eden. Was this dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, with 6 inches long teeth, like this up here, plant eater, meat eater, scavenger, or plant and meat eater? Anyone vote for plant eater? What about meat eater? Okay, what about scavenger or plant and meat eater? Okay, I got most votes for plant eater, and that is the right answer in the Garden of Eden. And how can we say that? All we have to do is go to Genesis 1 verse 30. Also to every beast of the earth and to every bird of the air and to everything that creeps on the earth in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food. And it was so. This makes biblical sense because the Bible clearly states there was no death right before Adam's sin, which means there was no meat eating until after Adam's sin. When you eat meat, you're eating a dead thing, so an animal had to die for you to eat it. Also, it means there can't be dinosaur fossils before Adam because there was no death until after Adam's sin. We also read in Romans 5:12, Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, so death spread to all men because all sinned. So those dinosaur teeth could be great for ripping through fruit. And those teeth could be great for biting into coconuts and pineapples. And you need a knife or something sharp to cut through some of these fruits, like I mentioned. But when you see an animal with sharp teeth, you only know one thing for sure: it has sharp teeth. So there's other examples of animals with sharp teeth that don't eat meat. This is a black yacara from South America, and that looks nasty, doesn't it? It looks like it probably could eat meat, but it doesn't. It only eats nuts, fruits, and vegetation. Here's another skull of a potential meat eater if you look at those nasty looking teeth, but it's a fruit bat, and it uses its sharp teeth to tear into fruit. Here's another skull with sharp teeth, and this is a skull of a panda bear, and pandas are vicious bamboo killers. In fact, a zoo in Australia says although all bears have teeth designed for eating meat, their diet consists mainly of eating plants. And there's another nasty looking skull with fangs coming out. Is that a meat eater? That's actually a Chinese water deer, a vampire deer. It doesn't eat meat, it eats vegetation, just like the deer around here. It just has teeth like that. So if we go back to Genesis 1:30, everything that has the breath of life in it, I've given every green herb for food. So Adam and Eve could have made pets out of the dinosaurs. And you could even had a pet T-Rex back then if you made space for it. But what happened? Well, that should be obvious. The Bible gives us the right understanding of the past to connect the past to the present. And it's not until Adam sinned that death and the curse entered this world. After the curse, that's for now. And if you read Romans 8:22, we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now because of sin. So after sin and after the curse, T-Rex now has a different menu and the other animals he would attack. So after the flood and Noah and his family and all the animals came off the ark, every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. So after the flood, God gave permission for us to eat meat, which is why we can eat filet mignon wrapped in bacon, or like Ken Ham says, hot dogs, because hot dogs can be everything. And we don't see the Bible saying this is a joke. And they went into the ark to Noah, 2 by 2, all flesh, in which the breath of life, except dinosaurs. But we believe, and we'll cover this in a few weeks, Genesis 7:15, pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life in them came to Noah and entered the ark, even the dinosaur, the kinds, and we'll get into that in detail. So those that were in the ark survived, but those who were out in the flood died and became fossils. Here's a cartoon of a dinosaur ready to become a fossil with the tsunami wave. Now, is there forensic evidence of dinosaurs existing in the not too distant past? In fact, we have 101 questions about dinosaurs. It says, bones do not have to be turned into stone to be fossils, and usually most of the original bone is still present in a dinosaur fossil. You know what they found recently? And this is like a creationist blessing. They are finding a triceratops blood vessels that remain springy, and they're supposed to be 65 million years, but there's no way blood vessels can still be in the bones if they're that old. Also, what are they finding? A duck-billed dinosaur still has blood vessels containing pigmentation and red blood cells. And it's supposed to be 78 million years old, and there's no way there could be blood cells and blood vessels still in existence if they're that old. Also, red blood cells inside of an unfossilized section of a T-Rex femur bone. So this is great forensic evidence. But will this convince those who hold to this evolutionary ideology, this brainwashing, ever since they were kids, that dinosaurs had to live before man? And you'll find it's hard for them to accept it because it's a worldview issue. And I'm going to show you a clip. And Dr. Mary Schweitzer found the soft tissue first in dinosaur bones, but she thinks that we have to rethink the chemical process of a bone turning into a fossil, because I can't give up my 65 million years dinosaur bones. I can't accept that the dinosaur lived a couple thousand years after the flood. No, we have to, or during the flood. Listen to what she says on this clip from the Discovery Channel.
Not going to believe this. When she picked up a small piece to stop the reaction by putting it in water, it stretched and it sproinged and it moved all over the place. So we knew we had something pretty unusual.
It appears to be soft tissue. When they look at neighboring parts of the bone, they're even more surprised.
Out popped the blood vessels, and they were pretty incredible. And I said, I don't believe it, that's not possible. We need to do it again and again. It's one of those just goosebump-inducing scientific moments, that's all I can say. And they don't really happen very often.
Blood vessels should not exist in fossilized bone. Many scientists believe organic molecules can't last more than 100,000 years. Yet Schweitzer's bone is 68 million years old.
I think the presence of soft tissues and cells indicates there's a process going on that we didn't have a clue about. So I think it means that we have to kind of rethink the whole chemical process of making a bone turn into a fossil.
So don't rethink the millions of years. Maybe there's a natural process that we've never observed. That's what you call blind faith, you know, believing in millions of years in spite of the evidence staring you in the face. A great demonstration of the power of one's worldview. Wrong assumptions lead to wrong conclusions. And she's actually professing Christian and still doesn't want to give up on this millions of year dinosaur. Next question. Are there records of dinosaurs living with man? Well, we saw that in Job, but let's look. And remember I said dinosaur is a new word. It wasn't invented until 1841. And the dragons of old were the dinosaurs in history. In fact, there are dragon legends across every part of this world. And there's just a snapshot of the different names. And you can see on this map, you got thumb from Nessie, Beowulf, St. George and the Dragon, Mokali, Mbembe, and I'll talk about that quickly, Chinese dragons, and so forth. So there are thousands of these dragon legends in every culture. Dragons do not look like any living animal, but they do fit the description known of dinosaurs. And then this was in the World Encyclopedia in 1973. The dragons of legend are strangely like actual creatures that lived in the past. They're much like the great reptiles, dinosaurs. Every country has them in its mythology. And here's a short clip from the Discovery Channel talking about dragons.
There is one creature remembered in the legends of almost every human culture that's ever existed. A creature depicted with remarkable similarity by the Chinese, the Aztecs, even the Inuit, who live in a frozen land where no reptiles are found. Even they have stories of this animal, the dragon. Cultures from different continents, people who had no contact with one another, yet all of them have stories describing the same mythical animal. Could it be these stories were more than myth? What if we discovered that this creature that haunts our imagination had once been real?
So let's look at history. St. George slaying a dragon in 275 AD. We have Alexander the Great reported that when he conquered parts of India in 326 BC, his soldiers were scared by the great dragons that lived in caves. 900 AD, an Irish writer told of an animal with iron nails on its tail, similar to a horse. It had thick legs and strong claws. Marco Polo lived for 17 years around 1271 AD and reported that the emperor of China raised dragons to pull his chariots in parades. In fact, in 1611, they had a post called the Royal Dragon Feeder. And what about paintings? All around the world we find pictures of dinosaurs on caves, on walls, pottery, ancient structures. And I'll just give you a taste. The first pharaoh had a united Egypt, and he had long-necked dragons right here on this picture. They look like sauropod dinosaurs. The temple in Cambodia, built 1,100 years ago, and let's drill in and see, what do they have? They have what looks like a Stegosaurus dinosaur. And it's a picture in the Creation Museum, what one looks like. You know, they didn't dig up the bones and say, oh, that must be something we found in the ground. No, they must have took a picture of something that they saw. They drawed it, just like they have pictures of other animals there. Northern England, the Carlisle Cathedral, the tomb of Bishop Richard the Bell, died in 1496. And there's brass carvings of dinosaurs in the cathedral, and they look like sauropod dinosaurs. Also, Native American petroglyphs under the Kachina Bridge at National Bridges National Monument. And what do we see? It looks like a sauropod dinosaur. Also in this book, The Great Dinosaur Mystery, a well-known old science book, the Historia Animalium, claims that dragons were still not extinct in the 1500s, but the animals said to be extremely rare, and they started getting smaller by then. There's an account in the African Congo as recent as 1990 of Mokala Mbembe, and he looks like a small sauropod dinosaur. Here's a clip that goes about 6 minutes from Institute for Creation Research, tying all these histories together to make the point even better than I made.
Let's start in the American Southwest. Natural Bridges National Monument in Utah is a rugged landscape where water has eroded sandstone into beautiful shapes. Under the Kachina Bridge, there is unusual rock art carved by the Native Americans who lived there from around 150 BC to 1200 AD.
One of the carvings looks just like a sauropod dinosaur. Some people say that this sauropod look-alike is made of stains from water runoff. But there's no stain, there's no water runoff onto this petroglyph. And if you look closely at it, you notice the peck marks are there, not stains, it's peck marks. So the whole dinosaur look-alike is made of these peckings, and that's what makes it look genuine to us. We have a mystery here, and the mystery is, how did they make a picture of something that looks so exactly like a sauropod dinosaur? So many years before paleontology started to even uncover sauropods from the ground.
You have artwork that depicts what could be dinosaurs in many different cultures around the world that are separated by language, separated by geography, and separated by time.
On the banks of a river near the border of Mexico and Guatemala, there's a carving made by Mayans somewhere between 250 AD and 900 AD, and it closely resembles a hadrosaur, more specifically, a Hypacrosaurus. And not too far from there, ancient murals show figures wearing headdresses decorated with creatures like jaguars and fish, and one of the designs actually looks like a Deinonychus, one of the theropods. Artifacts like pottery and textiles from pre-Columbian culture in Peru also depict dinosaurs. These startling images are not confined to just the Americas. Let's head over to Asia.
The Hongshan is a Paleolithic culture. It's one of the first people groups to arrive in what we today call China. And they're characterized by their very elaborate carvings in valuable stone, like jade. They have jade dragons. That's sort of the icon of Hongshan culture. And in bloodstone and in turquoise, they have carvings that look, for all practical purposes, like a dinosaur.
The Hongshan sculptors have made images of jade that do look just like pigs. So when they wanted to make something look like a pig, they were quite capable of it. But when they made other creatures that look like the cousin of a triceratops, why should we doubt that someone was relating to the artist what, in his memory, a dragon, if you will, looked like?
We have a Stegosaurus look-alike in Ta Prohm. It's an ancient temple in what we call today Cambodia. But the Khmer people built this temple in the 12th century AD. And it's got carvings, bas-reliefs on columns in this stone temple of familiar animals like a water buffalo and a parrot and a monkey and a Stegosaurus. How did it get there so long before paleontology discovered the first Stegosaurus? Unless the people interacted with a live Stegosaurus. That's a possibility we should consider and not just dismiss.
There are also plenty of dragons in the lore of Europe in the Middle Ages. Most of us think of them as mythical creatures and fairy tales we tell our children. You probably remember the story of the brave knight St. George slaying the dragon. The legend is full of symbolic meaning, but there's truth in it. St. George was a real historical figure who was canonized by the Pope in 494 AD. He's revered by Christians in the Eastern Orthodox Church. By the 16th century, there were thousands of reported encounters with dragons and other terrifying beasts.
In Carlisle Cathedral in England, there is a Bishop Bell who is buried in the late 1400s, only a few short years after Christopher Columbus went from the Eastern Hemisphere to the Western Hemisphere. So this is the beginning of the Age of Exploration. And yet during that time, when he was buried, brass ornamental carvings were put at his burial place, and in that carved brass, we see what look like sauropods. They have the long extended tail, they have the long thin neck and small head, and their legs are sticking down from their body, not splayed out like a lizard.
In one French castle, there's a tapestry with a swamp scene. And there's a reptile depicted in this tapestry, and it looks like a Maiasaura.
In the Middle Ages, an Italian naturalist, Ulisse Aldrovandi, included fantastic dragons in his zoological treatises. Did he just dream up these creatures? Why would he illustrate so many of them with real animals of the day? You could also find accounts of dinosaur-like beasts in the works of Marco Polo, the famous 13th century explorer. He describes serpents with mouths large enough to swallow a man. Alexander the Great wrote of encountering strange monsters, and St. John of Damascus, an early Christian, spoke of a dragon 120 feet in length, killed by the Roman army. And even before that, there were Greek and Roman historians.
Winged serpents are written about by many of the old historians, the Roman historians, the Greek historians. An example of a Roman historian would be Cicero. Herodotus was writing 400 plus years before Christ.
When I arrived there, I saw bones and spines of serpents in such quantities as it would be impossible to describe. The form of the serpent is like that of the water snake, but he has wings without feathers, and as like as possible to the wings of a bat.
Philostratus was a Greek philosopher who lived in the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD, and he gave very detailed descriptions of dragons in India. And he talked about what they looked like, how big they were, their color, how they behaved. So we have lots of ancient historians describing these creatures and giving us very detailed descriptions of what these animals were like.
So hopefully that convinced the point. Now to the last point. What happened to the dinosaurs? Well, they died. But how did they die? Well, evolutionists have over 100 theories on what happened to the dinosaurs. Many evolutionists believe that dinosaurs evolved into birds. But this is biologically and genetically impossible because you need to add new complicated genetic information over time. You need new information for wings, eyes, heart, lungs, nervous system, beaks, entirely new specified genetic information. And natural selection and mutations are mechanisms that shuffle existing genetic information, but you lose those information after time. You don't gain it. So this is going in the wrong direction. We talked about that several weeks ago. And it's genetically impossible based on operational science. The most common secular story is an asteroid killed the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. But why would an asteroid destroy all dinosaurs, but the mammals and other reptiles survived? Here's other examples of dinosaurs' extinction. 65 million years ago, before Rolaids, the dinosaurs were killed off by a massive plague of indigestion. Another one, dinosaurs gassed themselves into extinction, according to a new study from British scientists. Another theory is they ate too much, they starved themselves, and it ranges from volcanic eruptions to lightning to heat waves to the Ice Age killing them off. And National Geographic says more than 90% of all organisms that ever lived on the Earth are extinct. By 2100, they'd say half of the world's marine and land species may have been driven to extinction. So, what happened to the dinosaurs after the flood? Because we said they went on Noah's Ark, they came off, we got all these reports, dinosaurs that lived. Well, climate change. What was the big climate change? We'll talk about that in a few weeks. Genesis 6:13, God said, I'm surely going to destroy both them and the earth. The God created climate change with the flood, killed many of them off. But those that survived, people started hunting them. In fact, Genesis 9:2, it says, the fear and dread of you will fall upon all the beasts of the earth. So as the populations increased after the flood and the dinosaurs started repopulated, man hunted the dinosaurs for meat because they became a menace and to be a hero to save the village from the dragon. And also to prove man's superiority. So according to Marco Polo, also tigers were a bane in Asia, and now they're considered a endangered species. You know, around here you probably had different types of bears, but they were killed off. You do have some black bears. But man hunted dinosaurs. So, and also competition for land. So there's no mystery when we start with the Bible. Dinosaurs can be considered missionary lizards. First, they confirmed Bible history, and if taught with biblical history, we can think of dinosaurs as that. And also the death, how they died, that's the gospel message of sin. And then we can teach Romans 6:23, for the wages of sin is death, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, Romans 3:23. And then Romans 5:8, but God demonstrated his love towards us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Romans 10:9, that if you confess with your mouth that the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you can be saved. And first, we already brought this up, 1 Peter 3:15, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, but always be ready to give a defense or answer to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that's in you with meekness and fear. So we need to be out there equipping the saints to have answers, to defend the authority of God's word, laying the foundation, and leading to the gospel of Jesus Christ. So before I close, any questions? Yes, Pastor.
Mark, as I was going through this, and maybe I missed some of it, but were they saying that they were in existence even after the 1800s?
They started dropping off in reports. Now, I think there's still, the last report we heard is in the African Congo, that Mbembe creature that was a small sauropod dinosaur.
So what was the last year that they felt that they...
The last I have is 1990, but some would call some sea creatures, like you have the Loch Ness Monster could be
so
one.
Yeah.
any other questions, but I do want to bring up questions for the group. And we started with 3 questions. Hopefully after this seminar you can answer these. 1, are dinosaurs in the Bible? Okay. Hopefully people feel confident. Are there records of dinosaurs living with man? Yes. And what killed the dinosaurs? What's that?
Flood and then we did.
Yep. And also, manned, and they probably different climates, and you saw evidence of the dinosaurs getting smaller. I'll get into that next week. The lack of oxygen. We'll talk about that next week. I don't want to get into that detail, but okay, good answers. And that's it. So thank you for your attention.